Hi, and welcome to Growth Talks podcast. It's a place where you can find tools, ideas, suggestions, advice, and so much more on personal and professional growth coming from experts in these areas. My name is Snezhana. I am your host for today, but I'm also an executive coach and a leadership trainer. It is a pleasure to introduce my guest for today because we're going to be talking about a very interesting topic. So, Anna, welcome to the show.
Snezhana, thank you for inviting me. I'm really, really excited that we're going to talk about coaching and transformation, as I'm really both professionally and personally deep into these topics. And
Yes.
no wonder, because more than 15 years now, I work as a coach. And I work with executives and clients in different industries and on different markets. But maybe one step back, I
Hmm.
also had an extensive career in marketing and communication in
Uh-huh.
different roles, management, strategic planning, and so on. But that was the time when I really had an opportunity to work closely with and for clients in different industries. And then this kind of business perspective is something that is really, really shaping my view on when working with clients. Nevertheless, are we talking about the needs of the organizations or needs of the individuals or teams? But this kind of a business perspective is something that is really, really close to my understanding, even when we're talking about the topics that we're gonna tackle and maybe focus on.
Right, right. That's great. I'm so glad that you're bringing all of this up because it sounds like you brought something I didn't know. So it sounds like you have multiple perspectives on, as you said, transformation, because our topic for today is transformation, and we want to talk about, not just everything and anything. When Anna and I were sitting down and thinking about what we can talk about, that just naturally came up as a way to go about it. So I think from your experience and your curiosity goes around how can we as coaches contribute or support or help someone's or somewhat's transformation, be it that it's a person or an organization. I was going to ask you to share a little bit more about yourself, but you kind of went naturally into it. Is there anything else that you want to share about your background or where you come from, what you do before we dive into our topic for today?
Well, I think I gave a little bit of puzzle about my work background. I've actually entered learning and development more or less 15 years ago, and I founded Viga, company that's providing consulting and training and coaching. And I have a team of really dedicated and enthusiastic professionals with whom I really love working with, and they bring and they brought, because for years I worked on my own and then I grow a team. So this changed my work dynamics a lot.
For sure.
And I really, really enjoy having these perspectives that are, I think that sometimes we really have to justify what we are doing in our own businesses,
Hmm.
because I sometimes say if I'm there preaching or saying something to my clients and I'm not practicing that on my own in my life and my business, then I mean, that would show off at some point,
Right.
especially when you work with a team, because if they're exposed to true models which are, consequent with their doing and what they're saying and walking, talking, whatever, then it's authentic. And well, that's more or less that. Different background, education in law, but leave that aside. I would say I had quite a few transformation myself in my life.
That's great. That's great. So you're speaking from personal experience, but then also professional, different perspectives. So I'm so happy that we chose to talk about this because it sounds like you're bringing more to it than I even thought and when we originally talked about it. So that's great.
Maybe I wasn't even aware of that.
It could be. It could, you know, welcome to live conversations, right? We never know what can come up. Okay. Well, let us get started then in that sense. So before we share, uh, we dive into our perspectives, and I think that'll come out as we talk anyway. But Mike, I'm curious, from your experience throughout your career, uh, when you talk about transformation with people, organizations. You can choose which way you want to go or both. How do they view transformation? So, what is it that you run into when you start talking about transformation?
I think that transformation is actually rarely the end objective. Sometimes it is. I mean, I think maybe sometimes organizations are even more aware of the need to change and transformation. And they have it like more realistically set in on their horizon than in their perspective. But when they engage you to work as a consultant or as a coach with people there in the organizations, not all the people are ready to start a journey as a transformational journey.
Hmm. Hmm.
I would say that mostly people are feeling very more at ease or more secured when we are talking about the development or learning.
Okay, fair enough.
I would say that those frameworks are more acceptable to most of the people. We kind of tend to not be that brave in the face of transformation because I think that brings kind of very ambitious perspective, which sometimes we fear.
Yeah, yeah.
And we're not always, advocates and willing protagonists of a transformation.
Mm,
But it happens. Then transformation happens. And
yeah.
at the end of the journey, you can testify that it was the transformation of a team or an individual or maybe organizational party of the organization. I think most of the time it's the end result, not maybe
A starting
the
point.
problem. Yeah.
Fair enough. I can understand that. I guess w- at least when I think of transformation, it is something that's more long term, more you can't just go about it. You have to dedicate your time, you have to be persistent, you have to be really into it and go through the ups and downs and everything else to really say, yes, I've transformed. How do you define transformation? What would be, and we also discussed the term, true transformation. So what would you say is transformation for you, be it in your work or in your personal life?
Um, it's definitely the change, but the
Hmm.
change in a sustainable way, in a
Hmm.
sustainable that it holds, I think that all of us can change for a time and then go back to our previous ways.
Right,
Because
right.
that is so natural. I mean, sometimes something outside of ourselves kick us into acting, thinking, talking, behaving differently, but it can be for a while. And then if everything settles back to normal, to routine, we tend to go back. So in order to transform, it has to be a change that is lasting, that
Mm,
something is now very, very different and it will be and stay different than it used to be.
right. Yeah.
And I think that's the difference in between change and transformation because it's like a change that sticks.
Yeah. I love Yes, absolutely. And I think that's why it can be, as you said, it's a big word and we don't always set it as a goal initially, so to speak, because like you said, learning or development is, yeah, I can learn, I can develop. Can I transform? I don't know. And then when you ask me, how do you define true transformation? I was thinking, oh, actually, that's a good question. What would I say? And I think I definitely agree with your perspective of sustainability. So it's something that once it's done, it stays that way. We stick to it and we just keep behaving that way or thinking that way or whatever, wherever the change happened. But it has to definitely last. I agree. Yeah, and it's a challenging process for sure. But I do think it comes out as
Well,
no,
life is challenging process, I would say. So
for sure.
along that journey, I mean, the transformation also happens, and I think it's one thing is sustainability, something to be there and definitely stay as a change, but the other is the experience that leads us to behaving, thinking, believing, communicating, acting, however, differently.
Okay.
Because it's, of course, we have this rational mind that helps us logically perceive, analyze, maybe
Right.
come to different conclusions and so on. But I think it's about the experience and how we go through these experiences when we try doing something differently than we did. And I think coaches are facilitators of that process, I would say.
Right.
When a client is looking for or searching to find something different, different means needs a solution for this, or would love to overcome a certain challenge or to learn new approach, whatever. So something different. So the coach is there to help and facilitate that road for the client
Right.
itself. To help it do it not only verbally, like maybe I can do this or that, but to really help support and in a way help a client to empower itself to go there out there in the real life and to do something differently. And that's the I would say germination of the transformation, when somebody allows or is brave enough to do some to say something differently, to do something differently, and then
Mm.
to learn from that experience based on the benefits that that experience brings. And this is the point that I would love to pinpoint, especially in a transformation change. It's like a seesaw in between. Sometimes people are really willing to be on a in a very different point in their careers or life
Right.
comparing to where they are. But we don't see many people doing that. Mainly, even in our private surrounding, not only in our professional coach careers, we hear so many people talking that they would love something to be different and so on and so on.
Right.
But then comparing to the number of people saying and wanting, number of people who do that, and I think that's probably the main reason why we are talking about this today. There is not an equal number of people willing and people doing it,
Right.
because it takes a certain type of bravery, of
Mhm.
daring to expose yourself to something that you don't usually do. And that doesn't sound scary when I say, yeah, do something differently. Yeah, that's not scary.
Right.
Then what we do in our mind as human beings, at that point, we usually don't have an optimistic scenario.
Right. So it's
Our
all
minds.
the what ifs that
Yeah,
that come along.
usually we imagine that outcomes would be mainly negative than positive. So daring yourself, though you're not sure, at least, or you believe that something won't be that good, or that maybe your conclusions are not right, to try and do it on a smaller scale, but to try and do it and to see what you get from it. That's, I think, the moment when the change really starts.
Mm.
When you're brave, when you say, okay, I take responsibility to stop imagining the possible difference, but to start doing it. And I'm sure you can share as well 1 zillion examples in your coaching with your clients. But sometimes it's really just a simple conversation with a colleague
Right.
or a manager or a client, like 2-minute conversation, which we try and rehearse with our clients and coaching session. And you can see by the level of energy that they invested in the coaching session that the transformation is happening there. Because even saying it as a simulation on a
Right.
coaching session, it's really making the difference for the person at that moment. And then if that person sticks to that commitment and go out in the real life and is brave enough to do it really, then the change starts.
Right. What do you think is a trigger? And I'm sure there's not one thing, but what would you say are some maybe triggers that start that change? You know, you said there's a lot smaller number of people who actually go about and do something about the change versus the ones who just wish for change to happen. What triggers that act? Because what we need to do is we need to act on it, from
Mm.
going from just imagining, wishing, wishfully talking about it to really doing something about it.
The start is the feeling of, I think, when somebody's uncomfortable with a situation, and that is something, you're not comfortable where you are. And
Right.
that, I think, is the start. Because it gives you, you can't really relax in those situations which are, urging you potentially to do something different, to overcome that feeling of not being comfortable.
Mm.
That's the very start. But it's interesting that most of the people that let me be optimistic, that some people decide to stay with this feeling
Oh
of being
yeah.
comfortable, really, in relationships, in the way how they work, whatever, how they organize themselves, how they care or not care for themselves, their health, and so on and so on.
Yeah.
Just-
I go ahead. Sorry.
no, no, you go ahead. I see that you're nodding quite a lot.
No, but I agree because that was going to be my follow-up. So I've seen people who understand very clearly that they're not comfortable, that the situation is not ideal, that they would really love to change. They even know what they need to do to start the change, and then nothing.
Yeah.
So I'm curious, from your experience, what pushes them overboard, if or what keeps them um,
I think
where they're
something
comfortable.
positive pushes them overboard, not negative, not more of discomfort. It's really
Hmm.
not that. I think it's not like a panic. If I don't do something, then it's not. It's something really positive. And I think that positive is a certain um, optimism and joyfulness and even creativity and even playfulness that those people are still preserving in themselves. Because this is the transformation, is the play. I mean, you have to pretend that you can play that real life situation differently than you are doing it.
Until you start doing it really right.
Until, yeah, but first steps, first time, it's like I will be Indian and you will be cowboy. Yeah, I'm an Indian. Yeah, but I'm gonna pretend to be an Indian for, I mean, this school break or whatever, like half an
Right.
hour out there on the street or in the courtyard. And I think there is a parallel there. There is something really vital that is there, alive and kicking in the people who dare
Mm.
to do it.
I love that. I haven't thought about it from that perspective, but I love your perspective, the optimistic one. Um, and I do agree. I mean, ultimately, it is our desire to live better, be better, do better, whatever it is, but it's our desire to change. Usually we want to change for the better, not for the worse. So that desire to be different in a positive way can be the catalyst for change, so to speak. Lovely. How do you, as a coach, a trainer, how do you approach transformation? How do you help people reach that level? Because from my perspective, as a coach, I can see when someone is really trying to get to that next level or to get to that first step. And so, as an observer, you can see these things. And then, we're there to help and support them in different ways.
Mm.
What would you say is your kind of go-to when you're trying to support them to go where they want to go?
It's really, I really changed my mindset and my percept. I was always interested in people so very much, and probably that's why communication is like the key competence or thing that I'm working around my whole professional life. But I changed, coaching changed my perception quite a lot because
Okay.
I'm very personally like do fix act person,
Right.
and that's not very good for a coach.
Agreed. It's a good thing for manager or mentor.
Yeah. Um, but there is some, I think, very noble thing that I learned being a coach, and that is that you can be two things to the people in the coaching process. You can be the witness
Hmm.
and to be very humble in witnessing their stories, their challenges, the things that they're sharing with you, trusting you, and then to be a real participant in that conversation that you're having with them. Um, I always think that the clients are getting the best, obviously, not only in me helping them to get from reflecting to acting,
Hmm. Hmm.
that, not that, but being a person who is truly, fully dedicated to them in a different way than obviously psychotherapists. Yeah, we are not healing. We are there to really be there for them to talk with somebody who is fully focused on them.
Right. Yeah, that the presence
Yeah,
that we talk about,
yeah.
being
And
fully
then
present.
yeah, and then I understood that in the way what I'm doing actually exposed me to very different and a lot of people in my life. But this close up in coaching process helped me understand how many different people are out there
Mm,
and how their way of thinking and changing and transforming is so much more creative and different. And there are so many varieties that I could ever imagine. So I don't have the right to put my idea of how somebody can change its way
right,
of thinking and behaving there in that space in between me and the client, because it's about them finding their own way.
right,
And
right.
I now start enjoying seeing how that is happening. And I so much enjoy when they come and say, for example, at the end of a certain coaching process, and we evaluate what happened and the change or what's the different and so on, how satisfied are they? And they come and they say, well, I'm satisfied, I'm happy. And then I say, I enjoy this now. And then when this kind of enjoyment comes, I think then the true transformation is really uh, growing roots.
Mm,
Because
yeah,
it has to be something more than just, if it was discomfort, then it has to be at least comfort and plus.
right. And plus, so
And
there has to
plus.
be a little bit more to it.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. It's really great to get that reflection at the very end, because depending on, of course, the length of coaching engagement, um, I've worked with some people for years, and I'm assuming you have as well. And then being able to see them go through different phases and what happens in their lives or business or professional life, wherever they are, is really truly amazing. Uh, what have you, so from your experience, what have you noticed are maybe some common challenges or misconceptions that people have when we talk about transformation?
Well, I don't think that people have misconceptions. I think that they have really correct perceptions and that it's not easy.
Okay.
So I think that people are wise and realistic.
Right. Okay, fair enough. I would say I would
But
call that a challenge, for
yeah,
example.
but um, there is this thing, who dares wins, because people are aware of the challenges, but are not certain about the benefits and gains and
Mm,
rewards. But I think this kind of bravery and sticking to being uncomfortable for a while and exploring and trying something different, at least in my experience, for everybody who did it, really got like a reward.
right, right. I think
That
from my,
plus
yeah,
it comes.
I love that. From my experience, though, I've noticed that sometimes people struggle with that lasting part, you know? So I guess maybe what we described as a difference between change and transformation, where um, we consider that we've done it, we're a different person now, but that doesn't last forever and ever. It's just there for a particular length of time or a particular situation or whatever it is. So I think I would like to point out that the transformation for transformation to happen, you really have to become something else, acquire a completely new habit, something that aligns more with who you are currently or who you desire to be. But it is something that has to last. Otherwise, it's just a change or it's a temporary, I'm looking for a different word for change. It's a temporary different
Variation.
perspective or right. Um,
Right.
and then the responsibility on our part as well, because I have to be responsible for my own transformation. Nobody else will. Yes, as a coach, you can help me or as any other professional in different from different areas. They can be my resources, they can be my support, they can be there to help out, but ultimately I have to be the one who's in charge of that process. And I think those
Definitely.
are two main things that I've seen over time that there may not be, they may not be misconceptions, but it's something that's not super clear to people from time to time when they want.
You're
Um,
100% right. It's always the power, my power. It's only what I have in my hands, what I
right,
can, any change, any transformation is about. I mean, I'm the only resource that can make the difference.
right.
And the moment that I acknowledge that I am the resource, then I can use that resource maybe differently. And it comes with responsibility because otherwise, and we see that in I mean, working with individual clients or with team or with the organizations, you have to acknowledge that you have the power. The moment
Hmm.
that you acknowledge that you have the power, then the change can happen. And that comes with, at the end of the day, you say, I am responsible. But I think that saying I am responsible, I doubt that anybody stands in front of the mirror and say to itself, I'm responsible
Yeah,
for this. It happens differently in a feeling of being empowered or being inspired. And I think that there is a huge resource of being joyful and creative that people don't
mm,
even tackle into.
yeah, you're probably right.
As a resource that can be a transformative resource.
Right. Hey, right. Like, what excites you about this new
Yeah.
version of self or whatever it is that you're trying to achieve?
I
Yeah,
mean,
that's
just approach the situation in a creative way. And I saw clients who really changed when we discussed very difficult situations for them. And when they were exploring possibilities to address this situation differently, they really come to the idea of laughing at the situation.
okay. Yeah, I mean, I believe it.
And then
I
when we come to that, it's kind of cat catalyst because then you come from negative, from something is catastrophic and so on, into the ability to perceive that something can be lighthearted and positive.
I think that kind of goes
Then
back
the
to,
shift comes.
sorry, go ahead. I cut you off.
No, 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 no. You go.
Um, I think that kind of goes back to the what ifs that we mentioned, at the very beginning when we talked about when we talk about a potential to change, whether it's long lasting or not, the first thing that comes to mind is but. And then the so many what ifs. What if this disaster happens? What if I don't know? What if I don't have support? What if everybody laughs at me? So we do kind of go to those negative scenarios rather than thinking, and I've seen, posts on social media and all over the place, like, but what if you succeed? What if it's fun? What if it does become something that you would like to celebrate rather than forget that you even tried doing? And yeah, I love that. Actually, now that you said it, I don't think I've ever had anyone say, if this goes wrong, I'll just laugh at it and move forward. Um, but I like that. I'm going to steal that. We have a
Please
guest,
do.
another guest today.
Please do.
Uh, All right. Well, Anna, I want to be mindful of time, yours and mine, and of course everybody who's watching this. Anything about our topic today, and I know it's a huge one, and we could go about it for hours, but anything that you would like to share is maybe a tip, advice, maybe something that you use when you talk to your clients that would be beneficial to share.
Well, I think I just did with this laughing part.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, it's my takeaway. I don't know about other
No, no,
people.
really did because I think nothing can at the end beat that because that power of it's not really being unrealistic, but just knowing that um, we can draw on uncertainties, realistic, analysis and so on, but we can draw on this huge pool of creativity and I think it's really about sometimes with lightheartedness, you come to better solutions than with really deep dives. I
Yeah,
don't say do just this, but don't miss the opportunity to also draw from that resource.
right. Yeah, I love that. Thank you for sharing that. I do think that's really coming from someone who's super serious about things in general, even though, I'm usually smiley and I like to laugh, but I'm very serious when it comes to, life situations and changes and things that have to happen. I love what you just shared. So thank you so much for reminding us of this other side of the decision-making process and when we put effort into something, it doesn't necessarily have to be all struggle. It can be
No.
fun.
Even if everything is struggle and everything is dark, maybe, I mean, looking into the face of adversary, the best thing you can do is laugh. What
I love
else
that.
is there?
I love that. Thank you for sharing that. Anna, if somebody wants to connect with you or work with you, how can they find you and what do they need to do?
Well, I mean, LinkedIn is obviously an easy source.
Mhm.
So you will write my name somewhere and
Yes,
you
ma'am.
can type,
We'll share all the
type
links,
my name
anything that
there. You won't find a lot, but you will find me and then we'll talk and see how I can, well, be there.
Okay, fantastic. We'll definitely share all the links as we always do so people can easily find you. And if there's anything else that you'd like to share, please let me know and I'll
Thank you.
attach it.
Thank you so much for this. And I think we could talk for hours, but I mean, it's so nice to step back and just give a little light to what we are doing into some of the aspects of our coaching efforts.
I agree. I agree.
Ours and our clients, because I mean, it's more even their effort than ours.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, we're there to listen and support, but they have to do the heavy lifting. So, all right. Well, thank you so much. Thank you so much for being here, for sharing your experience, your thoughts, your ideas. I really appreciate it. For those of you who are watching, you know what to do. If you like the content, subscribe, like it, let us know what you enjoyed so that we can bring more topics like this, so you can listen and enjoy. Anna, again, thanks so much for being here today. And hopefully I'll see you some next time to talk more.